As the Tourism Indaba continues, there are hopes that this could signal that South Africa is ready to welcome more visitors and even beyond. There are also reports suggesting that delegations from around Africa have rallied behind South Africa to reopen tourism destinations after 2 years of closure. Let's find out about all of this now with South Africa's tourism's Zinhle Nzama. Zinhle, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. Always a pleasure to speak to you. Let's talk about, we've seen the Indaba. The minister talks about how, the industry needs to really recover and thrive in the midst of a pandemic. Now there's this fight to reopen these tourism destinations after 2 years of closure, COVID-19 throwing a curveball. Talk to us more about this particular bid.
Certainly. So I'll start with Africa's Travel Indaba, which is a platform that was identified by our own minister as a recovery platform. So what that means is that in the times of COVID and how the COVID and the pandemic has thrown a curveball to the tourism sector, we needed to come back and really reopen the sector. So what the African Travel Indaba has done, it has done indeed that. But what is key, as you've just mentioned, it is a Pan-African show. What that means is that it is a show that services the whole region. So we're quite excited. The show did start on the 2nd as a knowledge program day, which was about educating the sector in terms of the trends and looking at the challenges, but as well as solutions, that are facing us as the African globe, but also African region, but also how do we then find solutions that will move us forward.
You are in the sector, and the minister says that it's going to be important to focus on recovery, as you've alluded to as well. What does recovery look like, Zinhle?
I will tell you, when we staged the show, we knew that we needed to hit a call from the tourism sector who were pleading with us that it is time for us to recover. So we staged the show understanding that there is a need for the industry to connect. How it is looking like on the ground, and this was witnessed in the 3 days that we hosted Indaba, is that there's so much hope. But with hope, people are willing to connect and really move the sector forward. But what we also witnessed is the meetings that were hosted between exhibitors and buyers. So these are African buyers as well, exhibitors as well as global buyers. So they've had connections where they were discussing potential business that will really restart the sector. So there's so much hope for the industry in Africa at large.
Is this hope then, despite some of the harsh lessons that were learned by the sector during the pandemic, is this hope then looking at the fact that how the industry can thrive even, in the midst of a pandemic? Because as some scientists say, that COVID-19 is going to be with us for quite a while.
Certainly. The hope is actually us understanding that COVID is going to be with us, just like you've said. But now, how do we live in the times of COVID? We've realized that it is possible, to live in the times of COVID. So we are looking at solutions actually in terms of how do we then coexist with the virus. And we've seen how viable that is. We always say in Africa particularly, we are well positioned through our temperatures, which are constantly warm, through the landscape, which is, quite open spaces, that actually allows us to still do the business of tourism and thrive while doing it.
So there were, concerns for some around the travel restrictions. I mean, we saw the relaxation of quite a lot of them. I wonder, what are some of those delegates that are exchanging notes there? What are they saying around some of the restrictions?
Most of the restrictions, from the 2 year, most of the restrictions have been lifted, and that works on our favor. The fact that we can host 18 African countries, as well as over 57 global countries. It tells you that that movement is again open. So you can literally come to Africa, you can literally come to South Africa and do business. So what became the integral, part of the conversation was around the viability of us being able to move around, in the region, but also coming to South Africa as well as outside. So there's so much that is happening, tourism activity activities that are already happening even before, prior to us staging Africa's Travel Indaba, which is why we needed to make sure that we come in and formulate this platform, which becomes a catalyst for more possibilities.
And when you then look at some of those here at home who are in the industry looking at potential opportunities in other countries, as you say, around the continent, let's talk about some of those concerns that are raised by them, because we've seen in some of the countries, and sometimes when you see these big events, there wouldn't be an adherence to regulations. There would be concerns that there may be lax when it comes to dealing with COVID-19. So how then do you begin to navigate this as the South African tourism sector?
Certainly. So we've done 3 big, and these are global events that we've done in the time of COVID, in the midst of COVID. And what was key for us is to ensure that we partner with the government in terms of the regulations that are in place that will ensure that we mitigate any risks that could be associated with us hosting these events, and also, potentially spreading the virus through these events. So we've had very close relations in terms of us staging this event with the government in ensuring that we adhere to the regulations. But what we've also done, the event sector, we've always put outside a plea to say with organized events, it is very different in terms of how they are staged and hosted. We always make sure, because this is an event that is for professionals. So professionals understand the importance of us opening the sector, the business event sector, but also understanding that we need to sustain this industry for us to start, seeing the ROI for the country.
The important conversation there of sustainability. Zinhle, thank you so much for talking to us this evening as we look at the reopening of this particular sector that has been hard hit. So everyone can really agree that this is a sector that really needs a major boost. And that was SA Tourism's Zinhle Nzama.